Maya had always been the girl who stood in the corner at parties, not because she was rude or unfriendly, but because somehow she just never seemed to fit in anywhere. At 28, she had watched all her friends get married one by one, while she collected rejection stories like some people collect stamps. The small town of Riverdale was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Maya worked at the local library, a job she loved because books never judged her. They never made her feel awkward or out of place. Between the dusty shelves and quiet reading rooms, she found peace. But peace wasn't the same as happiness, and Maya knew the difference all too well. It was October, and the whole town was buzzing about the annual Harvest Festival. Maya had been going to this festival since she was a little girl. Back then, she used to dream about one day attending it with someone special. Maybe they would share cotton candy, laugh at the silly games, and dance under the string lights that made everything look magical. But here she was, 28 years old and still going alone. This year felt different, though. This year, it hurt more. Maybe it was because her best friend Lisa had just gotten engaged to her boyfriend of 2 years. Or maybe it was because her younger sister had called that morning to tell her she was pregnant with her second child. Everyone around Maya seemed to be moving forward with their lives, while she felt stuck in the same place. She almost didn't go to the festival at all. Maya had spent the entire afternoon trying to convince herself to stay home with a good book and a cup of hot chocolate. But something made her change her mind. Maybe it was the fear that if she didn't go, people would start talking about how the lonely librarian was becoming a hermit. So she put on her best dress, a simple blue one that brought out her eyes, and walked to the town square. The festival was in full swing when she arrived. Children ran around with balloons, couples walked hand in hand, and groups of friends laughed loudly at shared jokes. Maya bought herself a cup of apple cider and found a spot near the edge of the crowd where she could watch, without feeling too exposed. She tried to enjoy herself, she really did. She clapped for the local band, smiled at the children in their costumes, and even bought some homemade jam from Mrs. Peterson's booth. But every time she saw a couple together, her heart sank a little more. The worst part came when she spotted David across the crowd. David worked at the bank in town, and Maya had harbored a secret crush on him for almost 2 years. He was kind, smart, and had the most beautiful smile she had ever seen. She had imagined countless scenarios where she would finally work up the courage to talk to him, where he would see past her shyness and fall in love with the real her. But tonight, David wasn't alone. He was standing near the pie booth with his arm around a petite blonde woman Maya didn't recognize. They looked so happy together, so natural. The way he looked at her was the way Maya had always dreamed someone would look at her, with love, with pride, with the kind of affection that made the rest of the world disappear. Maya felt her heart break just a little bit more. She started to leave, but then she heard David's voice carrying over the crowd. He was talking to Tom, who ran the hardware store. "Tom, I'd like you to meet Rebecca," David was saying, his voice full of joy. "We're getting married next spring." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She stopped walking, unable to move for a moment. Getting married. Of course he was getting married. And of course it wasn't to her. She found herself walking toward the punch table, not because she was thirsty, but because she needed somewhere to go, somewhere to stand while she tried to pull herself together. The punch table was tucked away in a corner, decorated with orange and yellow streamers that fluttered in the cool October breeze. Maya stood there alone, holding her cup of cider, watching the happy couples dance to the music. The string lights twinkled above them, just as magical as she had always imagined. But instead of being part of the magic, she was just watching it happen to other people. That's when the tears started. They came slowly at first, just a few drops, that she quickly wiped away. But then they came faster, and she realized she couldn't stop them. 28 years of loneliness, of rejection, of watching everyone else find their happy ending while she stood on the sidelines. It all came pouring out. "No man will ever want me," she whispered to herself, the words barely audible over the sound of the music and laughter. "I'm going to be alone forever." She said it so quietly that she was sure no one could hear her. The music was loud. People were talking and laughing, and she was standing in a corner away from most of the crowd. It was just her private moment of heartbreak, her quiet surrender to the reality she had been trying to avoid. Maya had always been different from other girls. In school, while her classmates were worried about boys and makeup, she was buried in books. She preferred quiet conversations about literature to loud parties. She would rather spend an evening reading than going out to bars. Some people called her an old soul, but Maya sometimes wondered if she was just boring. She had tried dating, of course. There was Kevin in college who dated her for 3 weeks before deciding she was too serious for him. Then there was Brian, who she met at a friend's wedding. They went on 4 dates before he told her he thought they were better as friends. Most recently, there was Alex, who seemed interested until he found out she didn't like going to clubs and preferred staying in on weekends. Each rejection had chipped away at her confidence a little more. Each time someone decided she wasn't quite right for them, she wondered what was wrong with her. Was she too quiet? Too boring? Not pretty enough? Not fun enough? Standing there at the festival, watching David celebrate his engagement to someone else, Maya felt like she finally had her answer. There was something fundamentally wrong with her, something that made her unlovable. She was 28 years old and had never had a relationship that lasted more than a few months. She had never been someone's first choice, never been the woman a man couldn't live without. The music seemed to get louder, the laughter more joyful, and Maya felt more alone than ever. She finished her cider and thought about going home. She could change into her pajamas, make some tea, and lose herself in a book until the loneliness stopped hurting so much. But as she was getting ready to leave, she noticed an older woman sitting on a nearby bench. The woman looked to be in her 70s with silver hair and kind eyes. She was watching the dancers with a small smile on her face, and something about her peaceful expression caught Maya's attention. Maya had seen her around town before but didn't know her name. She seemed to be alone too, but unlike Maya, she didn't look sad about it. She looked content, even happy. Maya wondered what that felt like. To be alone, but not lonely. To watch other people's happiness without feeling like it highlighted your own emptiness. Maybe when she was 70, she would learn that secret too. Maybe by then, the ache in her chest would have faded into acceptance. But right now, at 28, the ache was too fresh and too sharp. She was about to turn away when she noticed a young man approaching the older woman. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a simple button-down shirt and jeans. There was something different about the way he moved, purposeful and confident, but also careful, like someone who had learned to be aware of his surroundings. Maya watched as he sat down next to the older woman and gave her a gentle hug. The woman's face lit up with joy, and Maya could hear her saying something about being so glad he could make it home for the festival. Home. He was visiting someone, probably his grandmother, based on their interaction. Maya felt a little guilty for watching their reunion, but there was something about the genuine affection between them that made her smile despite her own sadness. The young man helped the older woman stand up, and they began walking slowly through the festival together. He pointed out different booths, bought her some kettle corn, and listened patiently as she told him about all the town gossip he had missed. There was something about him that made Maya curious. Maybe it was the way he treated his grandmother, with such obvious love and respect. Maybe it was the way he seemed to really listen when she talked, not just waiting for his turn to speak. Or maybe it was something else entirely, a quality she couldn't quite name but that drew her attention. As they walked past the punch table where Maya was still standing, she caught a glimpse of his face. He had dark eyes that seemed both serious and kind, and when he smiled at something his grandmother said, his whole face transformed. Maya realized she was staring and quickly looked away. The last thing she needed was to embarrass herself by being caught gawking at a stranger. She had done enough of that for one night. She decided it really was time to go home. The festival would continue without her, just like everything else in life seemed to do. David would celebrate his engagement. Couples would dance under the string lights, and Maya would go back to her small apartment and her quiet life. As she walked toward the edge of the town square, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. She glanced back once and thought she saw the young man looking in her direction, but when she looked again, he was focused on his grandmother. Maya shook her head. She was probably just imagining things. After all, why would someone like him? The next morning, Maya woke up with swollen eyes and a heavy heart. The festival felt like a dream now, or maybe a nightmare. She had cried herself to sleep, something she hadn't done since she was a teenager. But there was something different about waking up today. Maybe it was because she had finally admitted the truth to herself. Maybe accepting her loneliness would make it easier to bear. Maya got dressed in her usual work clothes, a simple sweater, and comfortable pants, and walked to the library. The morning air was crisp and full of autumn smells. Fallen leaves crunched under her feet, and she could see her breath in small puffs. It was the kind of morning that usually made her feel peaceful, but today she just felt empty. The Riverdale Public Library wasn't very big, but Maya loved it anyway. She had been working there for 6 years, ever since she graduated from college. It was a place where she felt useful and competent. She knew where every book belonged. She could help people find exactly what they were looking for, and she had created programs that brought the community together. Maya unlocked the front doors and turned on the lights. The smell of old books and fresh coffee from her small office welcomed her home. This was her world, quiet, organized, and safe. Here, she didn't have to worry about awkward conversations or wondering if people liked her. Here, she knew exactly who she was and what she was supposed to do. She had been working for about an hour when she heard the front door chime. It was still early, and the library didn't usually get many visitors until later in the morning. Maya looked up from her computer to see who had come in. It was the older woman from the festival, the one who had been sitting on the bench watching the dancers. She was carrying a small stack of books and walking slowly toward the front desk. "Good morning, dear," the woman said with a warm smile. "I'm returning these for my grandson. He had to leave town early this morning, but he didn't want to take the books with him." Maya recognized the books. They were all about local history. Someone had checked them out just last week, asking questions about the founding of Riverdale and the families who had lived here for generations. "Of course," Maya said, taking the books. "I hope he found what he was looking for." The older woman's smile grew wider. "Oh, yes, he did. He's working on a project about small towns and their histories. He said your recommendations were perfect." Maya felt a little flutter of pride. She loved helping people find the right books for their research. It was one of the things that made her job so rewarding. "I'm glad I could help," Maya said, scanning the books back into the system. "Is he a writer?" "Something like that," the woman said. "I'm Ruth, by the way. Ruth Patterson. I don't think we've been properly introduced, but I've seen you around town." Maya smiled. "I'm Maya. I've seen you too, Mrs. Patterson. You come to the library's reading group sometimes. Please, call me Ruth. And yes, I love that reading group. You pick such interesting books." Ruth paused for a moment, studying Maya's face. "Are you feeling all right, dear? You look a little tired." Maya touched her face self-consciously. She had tried to cover the evidence of her crying with makeup, but Ruth had kind eyes that seemed to see everything. "I'm fine," Maya said quickly. "Just stayed up a little too late reading." Ruth nodded, but Maya could tell she wasn't entirely convinced. There was something about the older woman that made Maya feel like she could tell her anything. Maybe it was her gentle manner, or maybe it was the way she had looked so peaceful at the festival while sitting alone. "The festival was lovely last night," Ruth said, settling into one of the chairs near the front desk. "Did you enjoy yourself?" Maya felt her cheeks get warm. "It was nice," she said, not wanting to admit how badly the evening had ended. "I saw you there," Ruth continued. "You looked beautiful in that blue dress." The compliment caught Maya off guard. She wasn't used to people noticing what she wore or how she looked. "Thank you," she said softly. "My grandson noticed you too," Ruth said casually, as if she was commenting on the weather. Maya's heart skipped a beat. "He did?" "Oh, yes. He asked me about you, actually. Wanted to know if I knew who you were." Ruth smiled mischievously. I told him you were the smartest, kindest young woman in town, and that any man would be lucky to know you. Maya felt like she couldn't breathe. Someone had noticed her? Someone had asked about her? It seemed impossible. I think you might be a little biased, Maya said, trying to make a joke to cover her nervousness. Perhaps, Ruth admitted, but I'm also a good judge of character. I've been watching people for 75 years, and I can tell a lot about someone by how they treat others. She paused. I've seen how patient you are with the children during story time. I've watched you help elderly patrons find large print books without making them feel embarrassed. I've noticed how you always remember what people like to read. Maya felt tears threatening to start again, but these were different tears. No one had ever said things like this to her before. That's just my job, Maya said. No, dear. Doing your job would be checking out books and collecting late fees. What you do is care about people. There's a big difference. Before Maya could respond, the front door chimed again. Both women looked up to see a tall man entering the library. Maya recognized him immediately. It was Ruth's grandson, the man she had watched at the festival. In the bright morning light of the library, Maya could see him more clearly. He was probably in his early 30s with dark hair and those same serious but kind eyes she had noticed the night before. There was something about the way he carried himself that suggested he was used to being in control of situations, but there was also a gentleness in his expression that made Maya feel calm. I thought you were heading back to base this morning, Ruth said, standing up to hug him. I was, he said, hugging her back. But I realized I forgot something. He looked over at Maya, and she felt her heart start beating faster. This is Maya, Ruth said, introducing them. Maya, this is my grandson, Jake. Jake walked over to the desk and extended his hand. When Maya shook it, she noticed his hands were strong but gentle, with small scars that told stories she couldn't read. It's nice to meet you, Maya, Jake said. His voice was warm and deeper than she had expected. Thank you for helping me with those history books. Your recommendations were exactly what I needed. You're welcome, Maya said, surprised that her voice sounded normal. I'm glad they were helpful. There was a moment of silence that felt both awkward and electric. Maya could feel Ruth watching them with interest, and she wondered what the older woman was thinking. What did you forget? Ruth asked Jake. Jake looked at Maya for a long moment before answering. I forgot to ask a question that's been on my mind since last night. Maya felt her cheeks turn red. She had a feeling she knew what this was about, and she wasn't sure she was ready for it. Maya, Jake said, his voice gentle but serious. I was at the festival last night, and I happened to overhear something you said about no man ever wanting you. Maya felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. He had heard her? Her most private, embarrassing moment had been witnessed by a stranger? She wanted to disappear, to run away and hide somewhere no one would ever find her. I'm sorry, she said quickly, backing away from the desk. I didn't realize anyone could hear me. I was just having a bad moment and I didn't mean to. You don't need to apologize, Jake said, stepping closer to the desk. But I need you to know that what you said isn't true. Maya stared at him, not understanding. What you said about no man ever wanting you, it's not true, Jake repeated, and I can prove it. The library was completely quiet except for the sound of Maya's heart beating so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. I don't understand, Maya whispered. Jake took a deep breath as if he was preparing for something important. I've been stationed overseas for the past 3 years. I've seen a lot of things that change the way I look at life. One thing I learned is that when you meet someone special, someone worth fighting for, you don't wait. You don't let fear or uncertainty stop you from taking action. Maya felt dizzy. Was he saying what she thought he was saying? Last night, when I saw you at the festival, I wanted to come over and introduce myself. But then I saw you crying. And I heard what you said, and I realized that someone had hurt you badly enough to make you believe something that isn't true. Ruth was watching this conversation with a big smile on her face, but Maya barely noticed. She was completely focused on Jake and the words that were coming out of his mouth. I don't know who made you feel like you weren't worth wanting, Jake continued. But they were wrong. Dead wrong. Maya's hands were shaking. You don't even know me. You're right. I don't know you well, Jake admitted. But I know enough. I know you're intelligent, because the books you recommended helped me understand this town's history better than anything else I could have found. I know you're kind because my grandmother talks about you like your family. I know you're thoughtful because of the way you've decorated this library to make people feel welcome. He paused, looking directly into her eyes. And I know that any man who doesn't see how special you are doesn't deserve you. Maya felt tears starting again, but these were definitely different tears. I have to go back to my base today, Jake said. But I'll be home on leave. True to his word, Jake called Maya at exactly 8 o'clock the next evening. Maya had been watching the clock for the last hour, nervous and excited at the same time. When her phone finally rang, she almost didn't answer it because her hands were shaking so badly. Hello? She said, trying to sound normal. Hi, Maya, it's Jake, came his warm voice through the phone. I hope I'm not calling too late. No, not at all, Maya said, settling into her favorite chair by the window. How was your trip back to base? Long, but worth it, Jake said. I kept thinking about our conversation this morning. Maya felt her cheeks warm. Me too. That first phone call lasted for 2 hours. They talked about books, about their childhoods, about their dreams and fears. Maya learned that Jake had joined the military right after high school because he wanted to serve his country and see the world. He had been stationed in 3 different countries and had stories that made Maya laugh and sometimes made her heart ache. Jake learned that Maya had always loved reading, that she had wanted to be a teacher, but fell in love with library work instead. He learned that she was close to her family but sometimes felt like the odd one out because everyone else seemed to have their lives figured out. He learned that she loved rainy days, old movies, and the smell of coffee in the morning. I have a confession, Jake said near the end of their conversation. What's that? Maya asked. I was nervous about calling you tonight. I kept worrying that yesterday was just a moment, and that you might have changed your mind. Maya was surprised by his honesty. Really? You seem so confident. Jake laughed. Military training teaches you to act confident even when you're not. But the truth is, I haven't done this in a long time. Dating, I mean. Getting to know someone. Why not? Maya asked, genuinely curious. Jake was quiet for a moment. Military life is hard on relationships. I've seen too many marriages fall apart because of deployments and the stress of this lifestyle. I convinced myself it was better to stay single, to not put someone through that kind of uncertainty. What changed your mind? Maya asked softly. You did, Jake said simply. Something about meeting you made me think that maybe the right person would be worth the risk. Maya felt her heart skip a beat. I don't know if I'm worth that kind of risk. That's where you're wrong, Jake said firmly, and I'm going to spend the next 6 weeks proving it to you. And he did. Jake called Maya every night at 8 o'clock. Sometimes they talked for hours, sometimes just for 30 minutes if he was busy with training. But he never missed a night. Maya found herself looking forward to those calls more than anything else in her day. Through their conversations, Maya began to see herself differently. Jake asked her opinion about books, about current events, about life. He listened when she talked about her work at the library, asking thoughtful questions about the programs she had created and the challenges she faced. He made her feel like her thoughts and ideas mattered. You mentioned that you started a reading program for elderly residents, Jake said during one of their calls. How did you come up with that idea? Maya felt a familiar flutter of pride. I noticed that a lot of our older patrons were coming to the library not just for books but for companionship. They would stay for hours, sometimes just sitting in the reading area. I realized they were lonely. So you created a program to bring them together? Sort of, Maya said. We meet every Tuesday afternoon. I read aloud for the first half hour, usually classic stories or poetry, and then we discuss what we've heard. But really, it's become more about the conversation and the friendship. That's incredible, Maya, Jake said. and she could hear the admiration in his voice. You saw a need in your community and found a way to fill it. That takes real insight and compassion. Maya had never thought of it that way. To her, it just seemed like the obvious thing to do. Anyone would have done the same thing, she said. No, they wouldn't, Jake said firmly. Most people would have noticed the lonely seniors and felt bad for them, but then gone on with their day. You actually did something about it. That's special. These conversations were slowly changing how Maya saw herself. For years, she had focused on what she wasn't. She wasn't outgoing, she wasn't glamorous, she wasn't exciting. But Jake seemed to see qualities in her that she had never valued before. After 3 weeks of nightly phone calls, Maya realized she was falling in love. It should have scared her, but instead it felt natural, like something that had been waiting to happen for a long time. Jake seemed to be falling for her too. His voice got softer when he said her name, and he had started ending their calls by telling her he missed her. Maya would lie in bed after they hung up, replaying their conversations and smiling into her pillow. But along with the happiness came fear. Maya had been hurt before, and part of her kept waiting for Jake to realize she wasn't as special as he thought she was. Part of her kept waiting for him to disappear from her life just like all the others had. You're glowing, her sister Amy said when they met for lunch on a Saturday afternoon. What's going on with you? Maya had been debating whether to tell her family about Jake. She wasn't sure how to explain that she had fallen in love with someone she had only met once in person. I've been talking to someone, Maya admitted. Amy's eyes lit up. Talking to someone? Like dating someone? Sort of, Maya said. It's complicated. Complicated how? Maya told Amy about meeting Jake at the library, about their phone calls, about their planned dinner date that was now only 3 weeks away. Maya, this is wonderful, Amy said. Why do you look so worried about it? Because what if it doesn't work out, Maya said. What if we meet for dinner and he realizes I'm not who he thought I was? What if I disappoint him? Amy reached across the table and took Maya's hand. What if you don't? What if he's exactly as wonderful as he seems, and what if you two are perfect for each other? Maya shook her head. Things like that don't happen to people like me. What do you mean, people like you? You know, Maya said. Quiet people, boring people. People who spend their Friday nights reading instead of going out. Amy looked at her sister with a mixture of love and frustration. Maya, do you know what I see when I look at you? Maya shrugged. I see someone who cares so deeply about other people that she creates programs to help lonely seniors feel less alone. I see someone who is so passionate about books that she can recommend the perfect story for any mood. I see someone who is loyal and kind and genuine in a world full of people who are fake. Amy paused. I see someone who any smart man would be lucky to love. That night, when Jake called, Maya told him about her lunch with her sister. She sounds like a good sister, Jake said. She is, Maya agreed. But I keep wondering what's wrong with me that it took someone else pointing out my good qualities for me to even consider that I might have them. There's nothing wrong with you, Jake said gently. But I think maybe some people in your past made you feel like you weren't enough and you started believing them instead of trusting your own worth. Maya thought about Kevin, who had called her too serious, about Brian, who had decided they were better as friends, about Alex, who had wanted someone more exciting. Maybe, she said. Maya, can I tell you something? Of course. In my job, I've learned to read people pretty quickly. I have to be able to tell who I can trust, who has my back, who's going to fold under pressure. It's a survival skill. Maya listened, wondering where he was going with this. When I look at you, even from a distance, even through these phone calls, I see someone I could trust with my life. I see someone who would stand by the people she cares about no matter what. I see someone with a quiet kind of strength that a lot of people never develop. Jake's voice got softer. I see someone I'm falling in love with. Maya's breath caught. Jake, I know it's early to say that, Jake continued. And I know we've only spent time together once in person, but I've never felt this way about anyone before. These phone calls with you are the best part of my day. Thinking about seeing you again is what gets me through the tough parts of training. Maya felt tears starting. but they were happy tears. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered. There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment. "Really?" Jake asked, and Maya could hear the smile in his voice. "Really," Maya confirmed. "It scares me, but it's true." "Why does it scare you?" Maya took a deep breath. "Because I've never felt this way before either. Because what if I mess it up somehow? Because I don't know how to be in love with someone who might have to leave for months at a time." "We'll figure it out," Jake said. "Together. That's what people do when they love each other. They figure things out together." Over the next 2 weeks, their phone calls took on a different quality. They were more intimate, more honest. Jake told Maya about his fears of getting hurt in combat, about missing his family during long deployments, about wondering if he would ever find someone who could handle the military lifestyle. Maya told Jake about her deepest insecurities, about feeling like she wasn't interesting enough to hold someone's attention, about her fear that everyone she cared about would eventually leave her. "What if you get tired of me?" Maya asked during one of their conversations. "What if you realize I'm just a small-town librarian who doesn't know anything about the world beyond books?" Their first date was everything Maya had dreamed of and more. Jake picked her up at 7 o'clock sharp, looking handsome in a simple blue shirt that brought out his eyes. He brought her flowers, not roses, but a bouquet of mixed wildflowers that he said reminded him of her because they were natural and beautiful without trying too hard. "You look stunning," he said when Maya answered her door wearing a simple black dress that she had bought specifically for this night. "Thank you," Maya said, feeling her cheeks turn pink. "You look pretty good yourself." Jake had chosen a small restaurant about 30 minutes outside of town, somewhere they could talk without being interrupted by people Maya knew. The drive there was comfortable, filled with easy conversation and laughter. At dinner, Maya discovered that Jake was even more wonderful in person than he had been over the phone. He was funny and thoughtful, asking her questions about her life and really listening to her answers. He told her stories about his travels that made her laugh, and he was genuinely interested in hearing about her work at the library. "I have something to confess," Jake said over dessert. Maya's heart skipped a beat. "What's that?" "I went to the library 3 times before I finally worked up the courage to talk to you," Jake admitted. "I kept finding reasons to check out books I didn't really need." Maya laughed. "Really? I didn't notice you there before that morning." "I was trying to be subtle," Jake said with a grin. "Apparently I was too subtle. Why didn't you just introduce yourself?" Jake's expression grew more serious. "Because you seemed so content in your own world. I didn't want to bother you, and honestly, I wasn't sure I had anything to offer someone like you." "Someone like me?" "Someone smart and accomplished and settled in her life. I'm a soldier, Maya. I move around a lot. I'm gone for months at a time, and I can't promise that I'll always be safe." Jake paused. "That's not exactly what most women are looking for in a relationship." Maya reached across the table and took his hand. "Maybe that's because you were talking to the wrong women." Jake smiled and squeezed her hand. "Maybe I was waiting for the right one." After dinner, they walked around the small downtown area of the neighboring town, holding hands and talking about everything and nothing. Maya had never felt so comfortable with someone before. With Jake, she didn't have to pretend to be anyone other than herself. "I don't want this night to end," Maya said as they walked back to Jake's car. "It doesn't have to," Jake said. "I'm on leave for 2 weeks. We can spend as much time together as you want." And they did. For the next 2 weeks, Maya and Jake were inseparable. Jake came to the library during her lunch breaks, bringing her coffee and sandwiches. They went on long walks, explored antique shops, and had picnics in the park. Jake met Maya's family and charmed them all with his politeness and obvious devotion to their daughter. Maya felt like she was living in a dream. Jake made her feel beautiful, interesting, and valued. He listened to her opinions, sought her advice, and made it clear that he respected her intelligence. For the first time in her life, Maya felt like she was in a relationship with someone who truly appreciated who she was. But underneath the happiness, Maya could feel the shadow of Jake's upcoming deployment. He had received orders to deploy overseas for 6 months, leaving just 1 week after his leave ended. Maya tried not to think about it, but the knowledge was always there, like a storm cloud on the horizon. 3 days before Jake was supposed to report back to base, Maya finally brought up what they had both been avoiding. "What happens when you leave?" she asked as they sat on her couch watching a movie. Jake turned off the television and pulled Maya closer to him. "What do you want to happen?" Maya had been thinking about this question for days, but she still didn't know how to answer it. "I want us to try," she said finally. "But I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that 6 months is too long. Scared that you'll meet someone else, or that you'll realize you don't miss me as much as you thought you would. Scared that I'm not strong enough to handle dating someone in the military." Jake was quiet for a moment, considering her words. "Those are all valid fears," he said finally. "I can't promise you that a deployment won't be hard on our relationship. I can't promise that there won't be times when the distance feels impossible." Maya felt her heart sinking. "But," Jake continued, "I can promise you that I'm not going anywhere. I can promise you that no matter where the military sends me, you're the person I want to come home to. And I can promise you that we'll figure out how to make this work together." Maya looked into Jake's eyes and saw nothing but sincerity. "How do you know?" she asked. "How can you be so sure?" Jake smiled and touched her face gently. "Because in 29 years I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. Because when I think about my future, you're in every single vision I have. Because loving you feels like the most natural thing I've ever done." He paused. "And because I've seen what real love can survive. My parents were married for 35 years before my dad died, and he was deployed constantly throughout his military career. My mom always said that love isn't about being together all the time. It's about choosing each other every single day, no matter what challenges life throws at you." Maya felt tears starting. "What if I'm not as strong as your mom?" "You are," Jake said confidently. "You're one of the strongest people I know. You just don't see it yet." That night, Maya and Jake made love for the first time. It was tender and passionate and perfect, and afterward, as they lay in each other's arms, Maya felt a peace she had never experienced before. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Jake whispered back. "More than I ever thought possible." The next morning, Jake asked Maya to marry him. It wasn't a formal proposal with a ring and a speech. They were sitting on Maya's small balcony, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise, when Jake suddenly turned to her. "Marry me," he said simply. Maya nearly dropped her coffee cup. "What?" "I know it's fast," Jake said. "I know we've only been together in person for 2 weeks. But Maya, I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Maya stared at him, her heart pounding. "I don't want to spend 6 months wondering if you're going to be here when I get back," Jake continued. "I don't want to worry about other men realizing what an amazing woman you are and trying to steal you away from me. I want to know that we're committed to each other, that we're in this together no matter what happens." Maya felt overwhelmed. Marriage was a huge step, and they barely knew each other in some ways. But at the same time, she had never felt as connected to anyone as she felt to Jake. "Jake, I'm not asking you to say yes right now," Jake said quickly. "I'm asking you to think about it while I'm deployed. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that sometimes, when you find the right person, you know it right away." Maya looked at this man who had changed her entire world in just a few short weeks. Everything logical told her that this was too fast, too crazy, too risky. But her heart was telling her something completely different. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay, you'll think about it." Maya smiled, feeling a surge of courage that surprised her. "Okay, yes, I'll marry you." Jake's face lit up with joy. "Really?" "Really," Maya confirmed. "You're right. When you find the right person, you know. And I know." Jake kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. 2 days later, Maya stood at the airport watching Jake prepare to board a plane that would take him away from her for 6 months. She was wearing the simple engagement ring they had picked, out together, nothing fancy but beautiful in its simplicity. "I'm going to miss you so much," Maya said, trying not to cry. "I'm going to miss you too," Jake said, holding her tight. "But this isn't goodbye. This is just see you later." "How can you be so positive about this?" Maya asked. Jake pulled back and looked at her seriously. "Because I have something to fight for now. I have a reason to be careful, a reason to come home safe. I have you." He kissed her one more time before boarding his plane, and Maya watched until the aircraft disappeared into the clouds. The first month of Jake's deployment was harder than Maya had expected. She missed him constantly, missed his voice, his laugh, his presence in her life. They talked on the phone whenever possible, but between the time difference and Jake's unpredictable schedule, it was difficult to maintain their old routine of nightly calls. Maya threw herself into her work, creating new programs at the library and volunteering for extra projects. She started learning to cook Jake's favorite meals, planning for when he would come home. She began working out regularly, not to change herself, but because she wanted to feel strong and healthy. But despite her efforts to stay busy and positive, Maya struggled with doubt. Late at night, when she was alone in her apartment, her old insecurities would creep back in. What if Jake realized that long-distance relationships were too hard? What if he met someone else, someone more exciting and worldly? What if she wasn't worth the effort of maintaining a relationship across thousands of miles? 2 months into the deployment, Maya's fears seemed to be confirmed. Jake's calls became less frequent, and when they did talk, he seemed distracted and distant. Maya told herself it was just the stress of his job, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. "You seem different," Maya said during one of their rare phone calls. Maya's wedding day arrived on a crisp Saturday morning in November. She woke up in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by her sister Amy, her best friend Lisa, and Ruth, who had become like a second grandmother to her over the past few months. "How are you feeling?" Amy asked as she helped Maya into her wedding dress, a simple but elegant gown that made Maya feel beautiful without trying to be someone she wasn't. Maya looked at herself in the mirror and smiled. "I feel ready," she said, and she meant it. The wedding ceremony was held in the same town square where Maya had met Jake, but this time the space was decorated with white lights and autumn flowers. There were only about 50 guests, family, close friends, and some of the library patrons who had become like family to Maya over the years. As Maya walked down the aisle on her father's arm, she saw Jake waiting for her at the altar. He was wearing his military dress uniform, and he looked more handsome than she had ever seen him. But it was the expression on his face that took her breath away. Pure love, joy, and amazement that she was about to become his wife. "You look incredible," Jake whispered when Maya reached the altar. "So do you," Maya whispered back. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. Maya and Jake had written their own vows, and when it came time to share them, Maya felt more confident than she ever had in her life. "Jake," she began, looking directly into his eyes. 8 months ago, I was a woman who believed she wasn't worth loving. I had convinced myself that I was destined to be alone, that no one would ever see anything special in me." Maya paused, her voice growing stronger. "But you saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. You saw strength where I saw weakness. You saw beauty where I saw flaws. You saw potential where I saw limitations." She smiled, feeling tears of happiness on her cheeks. "You taught me that love isn't about changing yourself to fit someone else's expectations. It's about finding someone who loves you exactly as you are, while inspiring you to become the best version of yourself." Maya's voice was clear and confident now. "Today I promise to love you through every deployment, every challenge, every moment of uncertainty. I promise to be the woman you saw in me from the very beginning, strong, brave, and worthy of the kind of love that conquers all obstacles." She paused, looking at Jake with all the love in her heart. "You told me once that you would fight every battle for me. Today I promise to fight every battle with you, as your partner, your best friend, and your wife. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd when Maya finished her vows. Jake wiped tears from his own eyes before beginning his response. Maya, he said, his voice thick with emotion, when I heard you say that no man would ever want you, my heart broke for all the people who had made you believe such a lie. Jake reached for Maya's hands, holding them gently. The truth is, I fell in love with you before I ever spoke to you. I fell in love with your kindness, your intelligence, your quiet strength. I fell in love with the way you see the best in everyone around you. He smiled, his love for her shining in his eyes. You were never broken, Maya. You were just waiting for the right person to see how perfect you already were. Jake's voice grew stronger. Today I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you how valuable you are. I promise to love you through every separation, every reunion, every challenge that military life brings our way. I promise to be worthy of the incredible woman who chose to share her life with me. He paused, looking at Maya with wonder. Most of all, I promise to never let you forget that you are worth fighting for, worth waiting for, worth every battle we'll face together. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Jake and Maya's kiss was met with cheers and applause from their guests. But Maya barely heard the noise. She was focused entirely on the man she had just married, the man who had changed her entire life. The reception was held at the community center, with dinner, dancing, and speeches from family and friends. Ruth gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. I've known Jake since he was born, Ruth said, raising her glass, and I've watched him grow into an honorable, caring man. But I've never seen him as happy as he's been since he met Maya. She turned to Maya with a warm smile. And Maya, dear, I've watched you blossom from a shy young woman into someone who knows her own worth. You two bring out the best in each other, and that's the foundation of a marriage that will last a lifetime. Ruth raised her glass higher. To Jake and Maya, may your love story continue to inspire everyone who knows you. As the evening wound down, Maya and Jake had their first dance as husband and wife to a song Jake had chosen, At Last by Etta James. At last, Jake sang softly in Maya's ear as they swayed together. My love has come along. I can't believe this is real, Maya said, resting her head on Jake's shoulder. It's real, Jake assured her. We're real, and we're going to make this work, no matter what comes next. 2 days later, Jake had to report back to base to prepare for his year-long deployment. Maya drove him to the airport, and this time, saying goodbye was different. This time, I'm not just your girlfriend watching. You leave, Maya said as they stood at the departure gate. I'm your wife and I'll be here when you come back. I know you will, Jake said, kissing her gently. And this time, when I come back, we can start our life together for real. I'll be ready, Maya said, and she meant it. The year-long deployment tested Maya and Jake's marriage in ways they hadn't expected. There were lonely nights when Maya wondered if she was strong enough for this life. There were times when communication was impossible for weeks at a time, leaving Maya to wonder if Jake was safe. But Maya discovered reserves of strength she never knew she had. She threw herself into her work at the library, starting new programs, and taking on leadership roles she never would have considered before. She began teaching literacy classes to adults who had never learned to read, finding deep satisfaction in helping others discover the joy of books. Maya also began writing letters to other military spouses, offering support and encouragement based on her own experiences. She discovered that she had wisdom to share, insights that could help other women navigate the challenges of loving someone in the military. You're not the same person I married, Jake said during one of their video calls. 6 months into his deployment, Maya felt a moment of panic. Is that bad? Jake smiled, his love for her evident even through the computer screen. It's incredible. You're more confident, more sure of yourself. You're exactly the woman I always knew you could be. I had a good teacher, Maya said, smiling. Back at him. No, Maya. You had it in you all along, I just helped you see it. When Jake finally came home after a full year away, Maya was waiting for him at the airport. But this time she wasn't alone. Ruth was there, along with Maya's family, and a dozen library patrons who had become like family to Maya over the past year. "Welcome home," Maya said as Jake swept her into his arms. "It's good to be home," Jake replied, kissing her deeply. "It's good to be with my wife." Maya and Jake had been married for a year, but they were finally able to start their life together. Jake had been reassigned to a base closer to home, which meant no more year-long deployments. Maya had been promoted to head librarian, a position that allowed her to expand the program she was passionate about. 6 months after Jake's return, Maya discovered she was pregnant. "Are you happy?" Jake asked when Maya told him the news. "I'm terrified," Maya admitted. "But yes, I'm happy. Are you?" "I've never been happier," Jake said, placing his hand on Maya's still flat stomach. "I can't wait to meet our baby." "What if I'm not a good mother?" Maya asked, her old insecurities surfacing. Jake looked at her seriously. "Maya, you've spent your entire career nurturing and caring for other people. You've helped children learn to read. You've provided comfort to lonely seniors. You've supported other military wives through their hardest times." He paused, touching her face gently. "You're going to be an amazing mother because you have the biggest, most caring heart of anyone I know." Maya smiled, feeling her confidence return. "We're really going to do this, aren't we? Build a family together?" "We're going to do everything together," Jake assured her. Their daughter Emma was born on a sunny day in May. She had Jake's dark hair and Maya's thoughtful eyes, and from the moment Maya held her, she knew that this was what she had been waiting for her whole life. Not just love, but a complete family. As Maya sat in her hospital room, holding her newborn daughter while Jake slept in the chair beside her bed, she thought about the woman she used to be. The woman who had stood at a harvest festival, convinced that no one would ever want her. That woman seemed like a stranger now. Maya had learned that she was worthy of love, not because Jake had convinced her, but because she had finally learned to see herself clearly. She was intelligent, kind, strong, and capable of incredible love. She always had been. She just hadn't known how to see it. 5 years later, Maya and Jake were celebrating their 6th wedding anniversary. Emma was a bright, curious 5-year-old who loved books as much as her mother and had her father's adventurous spirit. Jake had transitioned out of active duty military service and was now working as a counselor for veterans, helping other former soldiers adjust to civilian life. Maya had expanded the library's programs to include